I'd like to call the December 10th Planning Commission to order for you. The first item on the agenda is roll call. Michael, you doing that?
Commissioner Polito,
Here?
Commissioner Tonelli,
Here.
Commissioner Levison,
Here.
Commissioner Lugers, and our new Commissioner Siebold.
Sure.
Welcome.
All present and accounted for.
Welcome, Steve. We have a full house. Next item on the agenda is public comments. This is for items that are not on the agenda. If you have comments on things that are on the agenda, there will come a time for that. And we have a very important speaker that wants to make a public comment.
Thank you. Thank you for everything.
Holidays.
Thank you.
I hope. Are there any other public comments? Okay, then go on. Our chair just left, so we need to start all over again. Elect a chair and a vice chair. As I understand it, this will be into June or through June,
Through the June meeting.
through the June meeting. So, doors open for nominations.
I'd like to nominate Bob Polito. I'll second that nomination.
For chair? Yes? Yes. Okay. Michael, can you take a vote?
Vote, I guess.
Yeah. All right.
No other nominations.
All right. Commissioner Tonelli,
Yes, aye.
Commissioner Levison,
Yes. Aye.
Commissioner Polito. Do you vote on yourself?
Can do it until June.
Commissioner Lugers
Yes.
and Commissioner Siebold. All right. Motion passes. Commissioner Polito is voted in as the new chair of the Planning Commission.
Now we need a nomination for a vice chair. I'll nominate Paul. I think he has quite a bit of time on this commission.
I'll second that.
All right. Commissioner Levison,
Yes.
Commissioner Polito,
Yes,
Commissioner Lugers,
Yes.
and Commissioner Siebold.
Yes.
All right. Motion passes. Commissioner Tonelli is appointed as the vice chair of the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
that was too easy. Next item is a public hearing. First item is penalty request appeal for 97 Placitas. If I understand it correctly, that item is no longer,
Correct. The applicant contacted me earlier today and said they wanted to withdraw their appeal. So they
So
will
is
be
that-
paying the full penalty.
I'm sorry?
They will be paying the full penalty.
Okay. So that's, yeah, we're not going to hear this again then down the road.
Correct.
Okay.
throw this stuff away.
We'll move on to the next item.
I don't think I will because I want to remember a $112,000 fine. So the next item on the agenda is, again, an appeal of a penalty at 79 Mesa Court. And Brittany, you're going to do that?
Yes, and it's just really a quick introduction to this item. Mainly to preface it with this is the first time that the Planning Commission is actually hearing these appeals. In the past, the appeals of penalties were being processed by a hearing officer. Our code enforcement team and the city attorney alerted us to the fact the actual process that's embedded in the code is that any appeal of a penalty should be coming to the planning commission, not the hearing officer. So that is likely something that we will look at amending when we come back to you with heritage tree ordinance updates. But for the moment, we're following the code in its explicit nature, and we are looking at this with the planning commission. So what you have before you is a staff report that addresses the facts of the case, whether or not the tree was removed with, or sorry, damaged, whether or not it was done with or without a permit, and then the nature of the appeal request. So the violation here was, or the penalty was assessed at $6,700. The construction, the contractor, Springs Construction, is asking that the commission consider splitting that fee across a number of different parties. The city attorney was involved in writing the staff report, and they're effectively acknowledging that the commission doesn't have the authority to split the fee once it's clear that the work was done and the damage did occur. So we have the entire team that was involved in this case available for any questions. The appellant is also on the call and can speak to the nature of his request during public comment. I'm joined by our town arborist, representative of our code enforcement team, and then our city attorney's office as well. So that concludes my presentation.
Questions before public comment?
No.
All right, anybody here to speak on that?
If you're in the Zoom here to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature so I know that you are for this item so that I can unmute you.
Nobody here from Springs Construction?
Yeah, Mike's iPad.
Having tr-
I'm here. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to chime in. Yes,
I'm sorry, who is this?
I'm sorry. I am Mike Kabetsky from Springs Construction, project manager of the project at 79 Mesa.
Thank you.
No problem. This was a penalty that was, or a violation penalty given to actually PG&E originally, because they were the ones that pulled the permit that is related to this trenching that involved the cutting of the roots in the trees. Yes, Springs Construction did hire the company that did the actual trenching, because PG&E did not have the resources available to do it. So we had to find alternate sources in order to get this project moving in a timely manner. What I do want to say is that, PG&E did receive this permit, but according to the Atherton Tree Protection Procedures Manual, which I've read, no permit will be issued until Town of Atherton arborist has inspected the site. I don't know if that happened. I don't know the connection between PG&E and the Town of Atherton during this process, but I was not involved in that. The permit directly related to the trenching was to PG&E, not to Springs Construction. Yes, Springs Construction is doing some work at the house at 79 Mesa. We are doing some upgrades, which required that the electrical be upgraded, which was given to us by PG&E, that they recommended that the upgrade panel be done underground versus overhead, which is why the trenching was brought to the table initially. And then the other thing is, when this came to be about, when I did find out this whole process was when there was a problem with the issue of trenching, it was brought to my attention via the inspector at my project at 79 Mason, and he said he could not do anything or inspect the trench at the time because it was not related to the project at 79 Mesa. The fine was related to the cutting of the roots. I was told I needed to get an independent arborist to assess the damage. I did that, paid an additional over $1,000 to do this. However, of which the ultimate, or which the report states that there is no immediate risk of tree failure by the tree pruning of the roots. However, we are still pushed that the responsibility was given to Springs Construction. In the end, what I'm saying is that PG&E they pulled the permit. They were responsible for the trenching, even though we brought the trenching company into the game. And even though this was an outstanding item, PG&E received the final, even though there was this pending penalty given to them. The reason that Springs Construction is now involved is because we were told that nothing can move forward as a result of this tree pruning as it relates to our permit and the work that we're doing at 79 Mesa. The PG&E also received a final, even though this was a outstanding issue related to them. So I'm just trying to justify what and who is responsible for all the costs involved here. Yes, we are open to paying a part of the penalty. The trenching company which we hired is also open to paying part of the penalty, but I think some of the responsibility does go back to the city, to the town, and also to PG&E. But it just seems like PG&E has just been pulled completely out of any responsibility whatsoever, and Springs Construction is responsible.
Anybody else to speak on this? I'll bring it back for. So the obvious question to me is if PG&E pulled a permit, why isn't it there? Why didn't they get fined? Why Springs?
Is that something you can address?
The initial fine was presented to PG&E. I had no idea that there was even a fine associated with this project until I tried to add an additional permit to the project, and that's how I found out that PG&E was involved in this. They completely ignored it, and the only way to move forward with this was to push the now penalty towards Springs Construction so we can move forward with our project at 79 Mesa.
I don't understand that either. If the fine has already been issued, I don't understand why your project's held up. I'm asking staff.
Okay.
Lisa Marie Daly, Code Enforcement Officer for the town of Atherton. I can't speak for the building department as far as finaling any permits or the Public Works Department for the APWs, Atherton Public Works permits. But I can tell you that the permits that were pulled by PG&E were for work done on poles on the public right of way. PG&E did not pull any permits for the property itself where the trenching was done. The tree itself was up on the property by the house where the damage was done. It was not done on the street. The original citation that was issued, or let me rephrase that, the original permits that were issued that included PG&E work had nothing to do with the permit that was later applied for by Spring to reassess and establish an electrical box at the house.
No,
Public
that's not true.
Works, so basically PG&E had the pole work done. But in order to bring the electricity up to the house, they had to trench from the pole for new electrical. And I'm not an engineer, not a building inspector for the town, so I don't know the schematics of that. But from what I was told by our inspector, Adam Sanders, who's no longer here with the town, that the reason for the trenching that caused this damage was for that. Spring hired the company that did the trenching. The permit then was issued for, or it was applied for, it hasn't been issued for the junction box at the house to increase the electrical. The permits for PG&E have not been finalized. I'm looking at them right now. So they have not been finalized. I'm not sure where that information is from. But I do know that we issued the citation to, or the notice of violation was originally issued to PG&E because in conjunction with the work at the pole, the trench was dug. We didn't have a permit to relate anything else to, and PG&E was who had done the electrical work, so that's why it was sent to them. When I spoke with Mike, he had told us that we need to get this rolling, we need to push forward. What do we need to do to resolve this? PG&E is not responding. I was told that they would take responsibility from Spring. So with his permission in writing, we reissued the notice of violation with the understanding that they would take responsibility for it. The town said, we'll go ahead and reissue this because you're asking us to, so that you can take this and get it finished up. Because in order to get his permits to be issued, we had to have this penalty paid. And that's why we're here today. So it was at the request of Spring that we reissue the penalty to them because PG&E was not responding to our invoicing and our requests for them to pay the penalty. But they also did not want to take responsibility because PG&E did not perform the work that damaged the tree. That was done by Spring and Casey Construction. It was the company that they hired to do the trenching. But for the fact that they needed the electrical panel, the trenching would never have been done. And that's how those two permits tie in. The building permits are done for what's done on the property. The APW permits are what's done on the right of way. PG&E generally does not go on anybody's property to do anything. All of their work is done from the right of way. And then another contractor is hired to do the work on the property itself. Our building inspectors who identified that the trenching had been done alerted this to our arborist, at which point she says there's damage here. But PG&E never did any of the work that actually damaged the tree. We felt that it was in our best interest considering how PG&E did not actually do the work and Spring admitted wrongdoing. And that's the reason that we reissued it at their request.
So was there at the very start, a permit issued explicitly for the trenching?
Negative.
No, that's not true.
Permit
There are
issued for PG&E for
pla-
the
plans were submitted from PG&E to the town of Atherton showing the trench work from the pole to the house. I have documentation on that.
I'm sorry, please, wait until there's a question. If we can't have people jumping in and talking over each other. Please allow staff to finish presenting the facts as they have them.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you.
I personally have a permit that was requested number 559 BP 25-00559 dated 7/2/25, which was applied to the building department for relocation of the main electrical panel. It has never been issued, which means it's still under review. Work should not have been done under this permit. If the trenching was included in the scope of work for this permit, it was done illegally and without permission from the town. If this is the permit that Mike is referring to, then it was done without being issued, which is also a violation of the Atherton Municipal Code because it was never actually
That is
issued.
fucking not true.
So if that's the permit that he is applying or he is referencing to, this permit has never been issued to the state because of this issue, the issue at hand. So if this is part of the plans, then yes, it may have been applied for, but it was never approved and it was never issued.
So, and I'm just kind of trying to get familiar here. In a perfect world,
You and me both.
taking the same case, step by step, explain how it would be done properly with the correct permitting or proper permitting. Say PG&E's from the property line out to the street
Mhm.
and not on the property. So how would that be resolved in the permit department before any work starts? How would that be handled?
In a perfect world, the APW permit would have been issued by Public Works for the repairs or the new lines to go to the pole, which had been issued prior to this and are correctly issued. The pole work would have been done, and then whoever the contractor was that PG&E hired, as Mike said, they did not have the appropriate equipment to do so. Whoever PG&E would have hired to do the trenching on the property would have had to wait for the permit. In this case, let's say it's 559. They would have had to wait for that permit to be approved and issued by the town before doing any trenching.
And that's the step that's missing?
That's the step that's missing, I believe.
And I would have reviewed it and would have denied it and had them move the trench 8 times away from the heritage tree. And so we would have avoided all of this. I review every building permit that comes to the town so that we avoid things like this. But if it doesn't go by my desk, then I can't do an inspection because I don't know that the work is happening. So when he said I'm supposed to do an inspection prior to work, well, I wasn't notified because how I get notified of work is by a building permit. An encroachment permit, I typically don't review unless there's a tree in the street. In this case, they didn't forward this to me because the tree was located up on the hillside in the private property. So I got involved when the building inspector contacted me and said, oh, hey, this trench is very close to the tree. Can you take a look? So the tree is 24 inches diameter. They would have had to be a lot further away. They trenched within a few feet of the tree. Typically, they would have had to be 12 feet away
Looks like it's what, about 3.5 to 4 feet or so? 5,
or
maybe?
even closer. So,
Looks in that.
yeah, and in the photos, the reason why so how our process works is when we think there's damage to a heritage tree, we require the contractor to get their own private arborist, write a report on it. I review that report, I look at their report, I do my own appraisal, and then I decide if we're going to issue penalty or not. But because the work was so close to the tree that they didn't do any type of hand digging, you can see all of the roots are ripped. Also, we don't allow roots over 2 inches to be cut without a private arborist on site. All of those things did not happen, so we decided to issue the permit. I'm not saying that the tree's going to fall over, but we still consider it damage to the tree. If I thought they cut so many roots that the tree would fall over, we would have doubled the fine. But in this case, we're calling it damage, and we're only halving the appraised value of the tree. There's the difference. If we really thought there was irreparable damage, we would have considered it removal and doubled the fine. So anyway, I just wanted to clear from my side how I came in, because typically what sometimes happens is there's a building permit. They do work that's not been approved on their plans. They do different work, and that's usually when people get a penalty. But in this case, I didn't review it. So I couldn't even say, no, you couldn't do it. So unfortunately, that's why I review everything. So
And the fine went to Spring because the subcontractor did the work.
Correct. The penalty originally went to PG&E because we were under the impression, code enforcement was under the impression from Inspector Sanders that it was because of the PG&E conduit that this happened. It was later brought to our attention that when Mike said, no, we hired the company to do the work, we said, okay, well, we need this penalty paid prior to issuing and continuing on with these permits. And they said, well, then we will take the responsibility for it because PG&E is not responding. That's a civil issue between PG&E and the contractor. The town does not get involved. So we let him know that we cannot get involved in this. And then that's when he said, well, then we'll take over on this and you can reissue it to us because we hired the contractor who did the trenching. In order to get this done, we need to move forward. Let's take care of it. There's several permits on the property, which is what alerted us to this. It's not just this one. So they wanted to get everything wrapped up. And he says, reissue it to us. I said, okay, if you're willing to take the burden of this, then we'll reissue it to you. Because ultimately you hired the contractor who did that work, that did the damage to the tree roots.
Anything else? Thank you. Sally, anything else?
I had a couple of questions just for Sally real quick, Bob. Sally, there's like 8 or so pictures in here where there's a tape measure measuring the roots from the private arborist. And I'm just wondering if that's just showing, are all 8 of those instances where they're using the tape measure, are all those violations of the tree protection?
Anything that's over 2 inches is a violation, and they're showing that they cut they cut 12 2-inch roots, 5 4-inch roots, and 6 3
Bad.
and 80 roots under 1 inch. So yes, we consider that a violation, and I'm not sure if everyone in the photos is, but some of those are.
And that in an instance of kind of clear cutting through the roots like that, when you're just machine trenching, if there's going to be an effect on the tree, from your experience, how long would that take to see any ill effects of that kind of trenching on a tree like that is that mature?
Typically, the tree could stress out within a couple years, so it depends. But I mean, redwoods are pretty. They can take some construction damage. So, I mean, typically for this, the tree would stress out, but the owner could provide supplemental water for this type of thing. And
And what about the stability, like the root stability of the tree? Would it?
Well, they did keep a very large root, as you can see in the photo, and he stated that they did keep one of the large roots. They're most likely one of the structural roots. Structurally, I think the tree is okay. If I didn't think the tree was okay, again, we would consider the.
Yeah.
Anything else? Any other questions?
Thank you.
And again, I'm sorry, if the tree dies within 3 years, then we would go back and do a penalty. This is just in general, we would go back and do a penalty of 2 times.
All right, Mike, you had something else you wanted to say?
Mike, you should be able to unmute now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. The report from the arborist that I hired does state that there is no immediate risk of the tree failure and not destabilized by the current root pruning. So that's one thing. The other thing is that when PG&E did apply for their permit, they did send in a map and a indication of where the trench was coming from the tree, from the pole to the house. So it wasn't just pole related. It was a trench that was set up from the pole to the house that we were working on. The permit that I pulled because the inspector told me that because it was a detached garage, I had to have a permit connected to that detached garage because all we were doing was doing some lighting and electrical upgrades in the garage. It's just the fact that the panel is attached to the back of that building was not, in as far as my understanding was, not part of that permit. When I submitted for that permit, when I applied for that permit, I did not say anything about putting adding a panel or replacing the panel to the project. That was the PG&E permit that came from the pole to the house, upgrading the panel to the project that we were working on in order to accommodate everything that was being upgraded in the house.
Well, it sounds like PG&E didn't take out that permit. That permit hasn't been issued, if I understand it correctly. So the only,
Well,
the only permit that was issued was for street work.
okay, I'm just relaying what I have in my, in my file, that there is a plan of a diagram showing the trench from the pole to the house from PG&E, issued by PG&E in order to obtain the permit to upgrade the panel. And there was also an electrical panel upgrade from our electrician, which I think that was finalized. I think that went through, and that was part of the whole process as well.
Okay, there's no question in anybody's mind that work was done that wasn't good for that tree.
Yeah, I'm
So-
not denying that we had any, I agree. We did cut the roots. It wasn't done according to procedure, but my whole beef is that nothing was really done according to procedure. The town didn't provide their assistance in assessing the whole situation when the permit was applied for from PG&E, or from even if we go back to Springs Construction. I read the procedures manual on what we're supposed to do as far as tree protection, and the first thing on there is that it's supposed to be assessed by the town before a permit is even given. So given that everybody had their permits, I guess I just have to assume that everything was done according to procedure. But
there were no permits. Am I incorrect on that? No.
Wait,
So I think that's
what do I don't understand.
There's no
that seems
permit
to
for
be
the trench.
That seems to be the,
No, the permit was from PG&E to run the underground wiring from the pole to the house. That was submitted to the town in a drawing. I have a copy of that. I'll send it to you.
I think the point is there was no permit issued for the root work that was performed,
The trenching.
the trenching.
And that's.
Town planner Brittany Bendick. So I'm
And-
looking at the encroachment permit application that was submitted, and there is a drawing that shows the connection, but it's not necessarily the trenching diagram. It's just the encroachment permit that's showing how what's done in the public right of way will connect eventually to the building.
Wow.
So I'm probably the least qualified person to be speaking here, but so we know a heritage tree was damaged. We don't know the extent of the damage or the long-term impact. So we know that.
Right. Right.
Right. We know a permit wasn't pulled. Correct. And we know the company that hired the subcontractor to do the work, right?
Yeah.
I think those are our only three considerations. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
I would agree that no permit was issued for trenching, and the Spring Construction is a general contractor. They're responsible for it because they hired the trenching company.
Which was directed by PG&E.
Sir, if you can just hold off, this is
okay. I'm sorry.
This is just a discussion among the members of the commission.
Okay, I apologize.
and it's not under our purview to go back, and it's not like we can divide up the penalty between G&E. I mean, that's.
No, I mean, you may have a small claims court
Sure.
action that's legitimate. I'm still, I've got to rely on staff that they're first of all, that you provided a letter saying, I'll take care of this, and that staff has done this properly. We don't have the ability to divide up the fine, and we don't have the ability to remedy the fine anyway. This is pretty much just a procedural process we're going through. So I think we can entertain a motion.
What is
Want me to make it?
For sure.
I'll make it. I move that the planning commission affirm the town of Atherton code enforcement notice of violation / penalty for damage and or disruption of a heritage tree at 79 Mesa and affirm the penalty of $6,700 to be paid within 30.
I'll second.
Roll call vote.
Commissioner Levison,
Yes.
Commissioner Lugers,
Yes.
Commissioner Siebold,
Yes.
Commissioner Tinelli,
Yes.
Commissioner Polito.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Next item on the agenda, item C, request for 3 heritage tree removals at 84 Elena. Turn that-
Good evening, Planning Commission. Brittany Bendix, Town Planner. I'll be covering this item tonight. I will remind you that this was initially heard in September as a request for both a variance that would accommodate a detached accessory building and extended portion of the roof of the main building, as well as the heritage tree removal request for 2 trees. It's now been extended to 3. So tonight's presentation really only covers the request for 3 heritage tree removals. Next slide, please. Looks like we have a little lag. Looks like we may have a problem with Zoom. Are we completely disconnected? Oh, okay. So I will be using the paper copy that I gave you instead of showing it on the screen. Our recommendation tonight is that you deny the proposed removal of 2 of the trees. One, a liquid amber, tree number 1, and the Atlas cedar, which is tree number 2, and then approve the removal of the deodar cedar, which is tree number 3. If you look at the map that was included in the staff report, this is just a reminder, this is a 1.24 acre flag lot. It is adjacent to another property that is under the same ownership at 70 Alena. This is within the R1A zoning district, and the 2 properties fully enclose the neighbor at 82 Alena. So that prompted quite a bit of discussion at the September hearing, at which time one of the concerns raised was a driveway that encircled 82 Alena that wasn't necessarily shown on the plans. So the commission asked that that be added to the plans. There is a proposed driveway shown. And then there has been additional communication between the neighbor and the project applicant relative to screening requirements. But generally, the proposal on 84 Alena is new construction of a 2,300 square foot residence with a detached accessory building that'll be relocated into the buildable area of the lot. And the tree removals really accommodate the driveway circulation at the front of these 2 buildings. The project is proposing an extensive replacement plan, and I sent you an email earlier today that reflected some updated plans that we have to that effect. That information includes more details along the screening as well, and then shows 6 replacement trees that are cathedral oaks and 2 coast live oaks. And the town arborist can speak to that a little bit more if you have questions on that proposal. Yes, we've now caught up. So this slide shows the location of, actually, this is a little bit behind, but that's okay. This slide shows the removal of the 3 trees, tree number 1, 2, and 3, the location of the single-family residence, and then the new accessory building. Go ahead and advance a couple. This is where we were leaving off relative to the planting of the replacement trees. The proposed driveway is also shown there, and then you can see the landscape screening plantings that are shown along that shared property line with 82 Alina. The project we did go through public notification for this hearing in addition to the one in September. The only neighbor that I've heard from is the neighbor that spoke at the hearing last September. Up until this afternoon, they did have concerns about the screening of the existing driveway. They are still concerned about the ability for the project applicant to drive across both properties and fully encircle their lot. So I anticipate you hearing from them during public comment. Otherwise, we haven't had any public comment on this project. As a reminder, the required findings for heritage tree removals address the probability of failure, the probability of a public safety hazard or personal injury or significant property damage, the number, species, size, and location of existing trees in the area, and the effect of the requested exception. General good forestry practices observed on the property, the allowance for the operation of any existing or proposed solar panels, and that there is no demonstrated alternative that would prevent the trees from being removed. Alternatives. Sorry, we can advance a couple slides. I forgot I had the presentation up with me now. I'm on slide 9. The standard alternatives that you have in the situation, especially because staff is recommending that you deny some and approve others. You could approve all of them. You could deny all of them. You could request or modify any of the conditions of approval, including adding conditions of approval. So wanting to put that out there. Next slide, please. And then our recommended motion tonight is again that you deny the request for the tree number 1 and tree number 2 and approve the request for tree number 3. That concludes my presentation and we are available for any questions. Thank you.
First question is, we're not even going to discuss this traffic between the 2 properties. That's not on the part of this. All we're talking about is these 3 trees, correct?
You can discuss it. It's not off the table.
But the decision you need tonight or you want tonight are on trees only.
Correct.
All right. That's, thank you for rephrasing that for me.
I think if what you find, so the trees effectively accommodate potentially that circulation. So if you found that there was a relationship between the tree removal and the circulation pattern, you could tie that into a condition of approval or a recommended motion.
I don't know exactly where that transit is on this
Right.
map.
It's still hard to tell.
I mean, it's obviously on the property line shared by 84 and 70, which is where tree number 3 is, but where?
Sure. So looking at this is the proposed driveway. There is a gravel path currently that extends across that, the property line that's just below the arrow that says tree number 3, the deodar cedar. That property line has a gravel path that facilitates vehicular transport, circulation. And we have that in a photo here on slide 7, I believe. Right, so here you can see where they've taken down, so this fence and the landscaping next to it was required perimeter screening for the development of 70 Elena. After staff went out and provided the certificate of final completion for this development, presumably the applicant came in and removed that fencing and established the connectivity. Also, in doing this, they removed a tree without benefit of a permit that they've separately addressed and paid the penalty for. But what's remaining is this driveway connectivity that facilitates the circulation that you're going to hear from relative to the neighbors' concerns. When a property is under common ownership, but only one residential unit or main residence is developed, I can look at it and interpret it and say, well, it's under one common ownership. It's effectively one lot. As they move forward now and develop 84 Elena with a separate single family home, it's effectively 2 separate lots now, even though it's under one ownership. And so as they move forward with the development process, they will be required to reinstitute the perimeter screening and effectively put back in this fence and landscaping that they've removed.
Could you repeat that? I'm going to play back what I think I heard.
Sure.
I'm going to ask you to correct me.
Absolutely.
So they own the adjacent lots. They've taken the fence down between the two.
Correct.
In theory, legally, they could either merge the 2 lots into 1 lot, or in theory, legally, they could still be 2 parcels of which they own both, and they just happen to be adjacent.
Correct.
Got it.
A distinction comes when they're 2 separate lots. They are developed with 2 primary residences, which is what eventually they are seeking here.
Right. Even though tonight we're here to address the trees, not the driveway, in theory, they could make the argument, we have maintained 2 separate lots. We have 2 separate residences on 2 separate lots, and therefore we should be entitled to a driveway to each of our 2 separate lots.
No, because the zoning code requires that they have perimeter landscaping that separates the 2 properties.
That's
So
what-
they're,
That's what I was after.
yeah,
Okay.
they're going to be at some point when they move forward with the building permit, it'll be routed to Sally for review for the landscaping requirement, and she will close off this connection.
Okay, so if they merge the 2 lots, they're likely to only be able to have 1 driveway. If they keep them as 2 separate lots, they're going to have to put a fence back up between the 2 lots.
Yes.
That was super helpful. Thank you.
And just a quick thing, they could make that a gate if they wanted.
Yes, I mean, what would end up happening is, again, Sally would go out there, she would do the final inspection, just as she did for 70 Elena. She would say, you've met the landscaping requirement, you've met the fencing requirement, there's a separation between the 2 properties, go ahead and move on with your life. And then they could come in and remove it. It then would become a code enforcement issue. Lisa Marie would be sent out there, presuming that a neighbor files a complaint, because we don't go and peek over people's lots to make sure they haven't put in a gate. So if there was a complaint filed, we would go out there, we would look, and we would go through the cycle of requiring them to provide a permit, showing the landscaping and the separation.
Okay, this is all kind of off topic, but
Sure.
You do not review landscaping until after building plans are approved, correct?
Yes. And that is in theory, effectively because applicants don't want to install the landscaping, the required landscaping, until they're underway with construction, or they have a general sense of what the construction activities are going to be. Another way to consider that too, where it gets challenging to tying any sort of landscaping requirement to a tree removal is that the tree removal is effectively part of the preparation of the site. So for them to wait to put in landscaping until they've removed the tree would require a lot of maneuvering during the construction period.
So to go back to the task at hand, I had questions about it along the property line. It shows plant bushes starting where the driveway makes a turn. And also bordering, I think it's 70 Elena. Correct.
No,
Do-
82 probably.
Or 82. Do we know how high these are? Do we know what it is?
I mean, they are calling them out on the plan, so if you'll see, the first lighter color are Prunus ossifragus, which is English laurel. They're saying they're 15-gallon. However, the minimum we require for screening is 24-inch box. But I was out on the site, and I'm not sure if this is correct. So when I was out on the site, some of their screening plants are already there in their boxes, and those were 24-inch boxes. So when they apply for the building permit, they will need to make sure that stated that they're 20. And they're probably about right now 6 or 7 feet tall, but they can get up to 20 feet tall. They're also saying they're going to plant podocarpus, which also can get up to 20 feet tall right now.
I'm sorry, but why do we care about this?
Well, and because part of this whole thing about some of the like tree number 2 removal is about screening for the neighbors. And
Okay.
these would provide screening.
And light bleed.
Yeah, and yeah, screening from the light pollution. And that was why I brought it up. Okay, and that's all I had. Thank you.
So,
Get Nick?
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
So proposed driveway, tree number 2 is right in the middle of it. What are you proposing that, obviously you don't think there's another way they can run their driveway? It's not obvious to
I
me.
don't do that. I don't design for them. So they would need to show me separate designs of how they wanted to design it, and then I would review that. I am denying this because the tree is not dead or dangerous. It is on a mound, which is not ideal. I don't know if you've seen it. It's not, it is
First
on
time
a-
around I went out
Yeah,
there.
it is on a mound. And it does provide some screening from the neighbors. I did visit the neighbor's site. I could see the tree from their perspective. And so I'm not basing this really on driveway location.
It with the mound, Steve and I went there yesterday, and with the mound, it's 15 feet in diameter at the base.
What are the ramifications of it being on a mound?
It's above grade. Probably some of the roots were exposed. Also, with the driveway circling it, the soil around it is all compacted. I mean, it's not an ideal location, but because the tree is not dangerous per se right now, I couldn't approve. Like the tree number 3, you can see it's probably in decline. It's one-sided. It's not looking great for a deer. So that one I can recommend for. Tree number 1 has been topped. There are power lines, but it's looking fairly healthy. But again, it's next to a driveway, so
Could they put the driveway in as drawn if that liquid amber stays in place?
nope.
Okay.
Well, they could use so for driveways for a new site, you can use the footprint of the existing driveway. So yes, they could use the footprint of the existing driveway fairly close to that tree. But but once they want to put in new driveways, so some of this is new and green. On the drawing, the green locations are new. And also where they're showing parking. But all of those areas have to be 8 times away from the neighbor's heritage.
So
Currently where the gravel is up against the neighbor's fence would not allow for a driveway. Once they want to put in a driveway. So the existing driveway has been torn out, right? So now that's left is gravel. That location would not be allowed. They would need to pull the driveway back 8 times. From the tree in the middle, from the neighbor's trees. So they couldn't have this exactly. But because the tree is like that in the middle, it's not ideal, so
it's not the prettiest tree I've ever seen either.
it's not full. So it's
So-
on a mound and it's not full,
But
so.
pertinent to that, since screening is a big issue, we have this correspondence from 82 Elena, Mr. Dave Stevens. But he said, I don't think we are concerned with the 2 trees that were in the removal request. The comment was made that they weren't the best looking trees, and I would agree, and don't add a lot to your property. So that implies that the neighbor we're concerned about be okay with that tree being removed. And it seems to me that it's not obvious to me how you would do again, I'm looking at a sketch and I'm not standing right next to that tree, but it's not obvious to me how they're going to get a driveway and parking area in there based on the way that they've situated the house. They've already moved the house and the gym to make everybody happy and get out of the variance bucket. So
And they're also, their newest update says that they're gonna plant 8 replacement box trees, 36-inch box trees, so that's more than efficient for replacement plantings. And as long as their screening is 24-inch boxes along all sides, then that would.
So Sally, regarding tree
Right.
number 1, the liquid amber, and there's a proposed cathedral oak to be planted fairly nearby, right?
Yep.
Just around the bend of that.
On the other side.
So I mean, if you're talking about screening, which I respect your opinion on that, as far as screening from the neighbors on that tree number 1, that cathedral oak, would that kind of serve the same purpose after it matures?
Yeah, I think so. It will be actually wider. So this liquid amber is pretty narrow. The oak will be wider, and also they are it's going to be required that they also plant additional screening along all of the property line.
Yeah.
So right now there's really no screening except for that tree. That's why it's drastic. But if they're going to plant the screening and the cathedral oak, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, my opinion is tree number 1 and that cathedral oak, and as well as some of the other screening you're talking about, kind of mitigates removal of that. As Bob was saying, the neighbor at 82 doesn't seem to be concerned about the removal of tree number 2. And we're already looking at approval for tree number 3, which is basically on the same property anyway, between 70 and 84. So I've kind of, flipped a little bit in looking at this and considering opinions and ramifications of screening and their generous tree replacement plan. I don't have a problem approving all 3 for.
Commissioners, Town Planner Brittany Bennix, just want to remind you that we still have yet to have public comment.
We don't know that a neighbor's not on.
I just been waiting for everybody to take a breath.
And the applicant is here too.
Yes.
So I'm going to open it for public comment right now. Sure.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Amy Cray. I'm attending this evening as representative to the applicants, one of whom has joined us on Zoom and would love to provide initial comments. Could we allow Amish Mehta to speak on behalf?
Yeah, for the benefit of those watching on Zoom, we just put in a message that it appears that the raised hand feature is not working. So you can chat with the meeting host, which goes to our clerk here, Michael, for the night, and he will make sure that you can speak.
Hi, this is Amish Mehta. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, thank you for this opportunity to speak to you folks. I'm the owner. I apologize I could not be there in person. My wife is out of town as well. So we sent Amy, who's our estate manager, to represent us in person. I believe the discussion that you have had accurately summarizes the state of the world. When we first applied for the variance, our focus was honestly on design and efficacy of the two properties connecting. We're not building a second home, so to speak. We're really building additional ADUs. I can get into the details of that if you'd like, of what we're doing exactly. They're single story in nature. And we thought that our prior plan that we presented in September would be well received by all because this is a single story, and we're trying to have the usability of the land to be adjacent to the current structures on 70 Elena. However, based on objections that we heard primarily from our neighbors, we took a couple of months to redesign the property and move the building structures to be in code so that we don't need neighbor approval for the location of the two properties. We got feedback during the call, that Zoom call, that similar to this, that did not seem to be much objection to the trees. So our focus was to come up with a planting plan that was generous. And if you visit 70 Elena, I believe Sally might have, you will see we've over-invested in planting on 70 Elena, not only for the sake of our neighbors, but also for our sake and that of all of our neighbors. And we intend to repeat that. And that's the planting plan that you're seeing over here on 84 Elena. Brittany has the history of communication that I sent across to her earlier today. With all due respect, there's always been some issue with these neighbors since we moved in here 7 years back. And now I'm understanding this has become a driveway issue. Which the whole screening thing of the driveway on one side that faces our own property seems kind of bizarre to us that we'd want to screen our own property on that side. But as you said, this is not a driveway issue. This is a issue tied to the trees. Nonetheless, our intention is to use the 84 Elena driveway to service 84 Elena and the ADU structures there, and the 70 Elena driveway for the 70 Elena property. Just to give you a little bit more comfort around that, I also own the property in front of 70 Elena. And that property, we took land in through the town of Atherton and made our existing driveway broader. We have no need to use the 84 Elena driveway to connect to the 70 Elena driveway like we once might have envisioned a while back. That said, I don't exactly feel comfortable giving up legal rights just because we have neighbor complaints on what we should or should not be doing. I have absolute conviction in following the town of Atherton's code and whatever we are required to do by the town of Atherton. But I would request you to consider the practical implications of the three trees and what we're proposing to replace it with for a total of only 3,000 square feet on 1.2 acres with screening that is going to be more than sufficient, as you've heard overall in the call. And the practical case of walking from one property to another, that when you happen to own both, if you wanted to, and if it comes to this, we would just merge the two properties legally into one entity. We've chosen to not do that for estate planning reasons, and we have 2 children. That's the sole reason why we haven't done it. But it feels a little bit silly that this is a conversation becoming about a driveway when our pure focus is to just put 3,000 square feet and screen the property on all sides. So I'm here to answer any questions, as is our architect, Paul Schlachter, who's on this call as well. And so I'm happy to do so.
Going to say anything else?
Does the commission have any questions for the architect?
I don't.
Okay. We did get a comment through chat from the owners of 82 Elena. They've said that they do not oppose the removal of these 3 trees. Their main concern remains to be the driveway connecting 70 and 84 and its proximity to a heritage oak that they would like to protect. They are formally requesting that the existing driveway connecting the 2 properties be restricted to pedestrian access only.
That issue is not before us tonight.
Yeah, which is of course not the issue, but that is the name. They're just relaying the comment.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the commissioners. Paul, I tend to lean towards you said. Everybody knows I'm not the biggest tree guy. But the trees that they're planning to plant are going to be vastly superior, better for everybody involved than these trees we're talking about. So I could see my way to, for sure, let 3 and 2 go.
So there's also along the driveway, they're planting the laurels again. So I don't see a need for tree number 1. Tree number 2, I don't see, it disrupts the driveway and it's not particularly attractive, and they provided screening with the laurels. So I would be content in all 3 trees.
Is there a way to make sure that the perimeter screening after these trees are taken down is in fact put in, and that neighbors, I mean, my concern here is the neighbors and how much they're affected by these trees come out, what kind of screening they have,
So when they-
regardless of the, whatever it is, driveway, light bleed, whatever.
So 2 things. So the driveway and any drainage and grading and trenching, they will have to apply for a grading and drainage. On the permit, they need to show exactly where the driveway is located. They'll get comments. If they're showing the driveway to the fence, they're going to get comments on that. When they get to the frame of any of the buildings, they will be required to submit a formal landscape screening permit. In that case, I would review that. I've already reached out to the neighbor and I told him that it's public. So if he wanted to come in and take a look at it, he can. But I would still approve what our basic landscape screening requirement is, which is for a flat lot like that, 24-inch box shrubs are required. That can reach at least 20 feet tall. So if I approve that plan, then at the final of the building, so for them to actually get the final of their building, I have to go to the site and I have to walk the whole site and make sure everything is. Now, if once I sign off on that final and they remove something, we get a complaint, then code enforcement would get involved and we would require it back in place. So you can't put in your screening and then take it out. Because you're actually signing something when you apply for landscape screening that you will keep it up for the rest of the life of you on that property. So if screening dies, we require you to put it back in. And so that's, I guess, I'm hearing that we're going to say that these are 2 different properties, and they have 2 different parcel numbers. And so our code currently says that you have to screen all sides except for the front. And so we've actually had other sites that have done lot splits and they were the same owner. And we also made them screen down the middle, and they said, our family's going to live in both of the sites. We don't want screening down the middle, but they wanted to do a lot split. And so our code says you have certain requirements for a parcel. So that's how, that's just going through our code. I'm just following code.
Yep.
So.
Which is what we're all here to do. And I just, we don't need to increase Lisa Marie's workload. What we're trying to do is find a solution here so that everybody is a good neighbor.
Can I ask you a procedural question? So hypothetically, suppose we grant removal of all 3 trees. The there's lavish new plants that are proposed. But is there a way for us to say hypothetically, yes, you can move the 3 trees, but it is contingent upon those, a guarantee that what you have proposed will actually happen?
Yeah, so one of the conditions will be, and if you want to update it to what they're saying, the condition, the certificate Brittany has, shows the old numbers, amount of replacement plantings. Anyway, you can make that as a condition saying we're approving these trees, and the condition is that you plant these 8 trees. And then how we know that they get planted is, again, at final, I go out there and I make sure all 8 trees are in the ground. And then I final that off. So
I guess my comment would be, like some of you, I'd be fine allowing them to remove all 3 trees, particularly given that you don't have a neighbor who's objecting to it as well, contingent upon a guarantee that all the other plants that are contemplated actually end up being planted.
And do we have, I can't find it in this pile of paper, what he's proposing for those 6 or 7 trees? Did
So
I hear
per
they're
the new-
36-inch containers?
yeah, the new plan that we received, or the plan, it shows, and the estate manager can correct me, but they're showing 2 Quercus agrifolia, 2 coast live oaks that are 36-inch box, and 6 Quercus virginiana, which is the cathedral oaks, 36-inch box. So they're proposing 8 oaks that are 36-inch boxes. So that could be the.
Brittany's waving this at me, but does it say on there 36-inch? I don't know where to find that.
You can ask that it be consistent with the plans that were submitted, dated December 2nd, 2025.
So in looking at the write-up that's dated December 4th, it says the applicant is proposing a replacement planting of 5 trees, 3 36-inch container-sized coast live oaks along the rear property line and 2 36-inch container-sized cathedral oaks front yard setback.
So you could change that to the 2 Quercus agrifolia, 2 coast live oaks, and 6 cathedral oaks, which they're proposing.
So that's an update to what's here?
Yes.
Essentially?
As
Oh,
of today.
okay.
If that's what you wanted to
And
do.
what's the size? Because if it's 36-inch, it's a slam dunk to me.
Yes, they're proposing all of those trees to be 36-inch boxes.
All right.
And that's 2, what was the number again? 2 cathedrals and 6 live oaks or?
Oh, 2 coast live oaks and 6 cathedral.
Cathedrals, okay, it was backwards. Okay.
Like to make a motion? Or questions?
I'm not seeing any additional questions or comments online either.
All right, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the removal of trees 1, 2, and 3 at 84 Elena Avenue. Categorically exempt the project from CEQA. But as a requirement for this, that we have all, what's the date of the transmission? All the
December 2nd.
6-inch oak trees, I believe there are 8 of them, 6 and 2. That all those, per the plan that's been submitted to Sally, the town arborist, that all those be planted, period.
Second.
All right.
Any further discussion?
Okay.
Roll call?
Commissioner Polito,
I'm in favor.
Commissioner Siebold,
Yes.
Commissioner Tonelli,
Aye.
Commissioner Levison,
Yes.
and Commissioner Lugers.
Yes.
All right, we'll move on to one of our, anything that has to do with the housing ordinances, favorite topic of ours. Item D, consideration of a resolution recommending amendments to the Atherton Municipal Code to adopt an inclusionary housing ordinance. Thanks, Sally.
Thank you.
Hope she didn't leave angry.
She didn't want to stay for this.
My mic is angry for her. Town Planner Brittany Bendix, presenting to you tonight on the inclusionary housing ordinance. Our recommendation is that the Planning Commission consider the draft ordinance before you and adopt a resolution recommending that the council adopt the inclusionary housing ordinance. So my presentation tonight is fairly brief. It will go over the highlights of the staff report. I can take questions by slide if you'd prefer, or wait till the end. Just general background, we really jumped into this discussion in January of this year at a joint study session with the Planning Commission and the City Council, where the Nexus studies from Bay Area Economics, or BAE, were provided. This looks at the feasibility of adopting an inclusionary housing ordinance, as well as a nexus fee analysis that addresses the potential in lieu fee and construction of units. The direction at that study session was really to put the ordinance on hold pending the prioritization of getting the housing element certified. We were successful in that endeavor in May of 2025 when we finally, after a lot of hard work by individuals up here, received certification by the state. We then came back in June for another study session. At this time, we had the benefit of looking at the town's 2024 annual progress report. The progress report is the it's the report that we submit to the Housing and Community Development Department. That's HCD. I mentioned that acronym earlier. Sorry for not spelling it out. That's the report that we submit annually to HCD that addresses how we're doing on our regional housing needs allocation amount. And we covered that at the June study session. We're doing pretty well. We're generally at 30% of what we're required to produce across multiple income levels, despite only being 2 years into an 8-year cycle. A lot of that success is attributed to our ADU program, where we have self-reported surveys of rents being at 0 or very low rental rates for proposed ADUs. So that's one of the reasons we're actually performing fairly well on our lower income categories. When we do well in a low income category, we can move that number up to a higher income category. Can't go the other. So I want to put that out there. At the end of that meeting, council directed both staff and the commission to go ahead and move forward with the ordinance. One of the things that was considered at that meeting was, were we just going to move forward looking at multifamily development sites, or were we going to consider single family homes? Council effectively took single family homes and any sort of fee off the table and encouraged staff and commission to forward an ordinance that would apply to the RM10 and RM20 and 40 sites. So that's the bulk of what's in the ordinance that's submitted in your staff report, bringing us to December. But there are 2 Senate bills that came into play this year that I really want to bring to your attention. The first is Senate Bill 1123. This became effective in 2025, and take what you know about the SB 9 lot splits, where you can take one lot and split it into 2. You're restricted to 2 units on each new lot. 1123 allows you to go up to 10 lots on a single family zoned property if it's vacant. There's stipulations for how long does it have to be vacant, but generally where I'm seeing interest in this is from developers who are targeting our RM10 properties and saying, well, hey, it's already zoned for multifamily. I want to take that multifamily level of eligibility and do a subdivision here instead. My problem as your planning director is that if I let them go through a 10 lot split, that doesn't count towards addressing our AFFH component. I can't use that development to check the box that we have worked so hard to create and say, hey, this is a multifamily development, even though it's 10 units, to satisfy the AFFH is the affirmatively furthering fair housing requirement that is embedded in our state law as well as the federal government. So that's been really problematic. And in the event that a 10 lot split project does happen on our RM10 sites, I want to make sure that that type of development is captured in our inclusionary ordinance. So at least we can try and get some inclusionary lower income out of that. The second Senate bill that is even more to swallow is SB 79. I did a study session with the City Council last Wednesday on this bill. It affects 7 lots within the town of Atherton, and it is a bill coming from the state that enables development up to 120 dwelling units per acre on any lots within a quarter of a mile from a transit station, such as the Menlo Park Caltrain station. So this lot hits one property at the corner of Valparaiso and El Camino. It's roughly a third of an acre on Victoria. And then it hits 6 others on at the intersection of Glenwood and Laurel. So those properties are now subject to potential for multifamily development, and there is no local inclusionary housing policy that would affect them. They are required to do low income units at a certain level of development if they get there, but there's no required alignment with a local policy unless we adopt one. So I've put that in there for council consideration, but at this time, council hasn't really had a public discussion on what they'd like to see happen for an inclusionary ordinance on sites. The way that it's framed also in the ordinance is that it would protect the town's ability to apply inclusionary housing on any sites that become eligible by family zoning. This is a potential perhaps in future state legislation that I want to control for and get for the city council. Any questions on those before I move? Okay, fine. So here I've framed the applicability. The ordinance, as I've addressed, will apply at least to development on RM 10, 20, and 40 sites with that zoning district overlay, SB 1123 developments, SB 79 developments, and conversions of any existing multifamily housing. This last one with conversions, that's not necessarily highly likely at the moment, but it's some language that I want to make sure that we have in place in case it becomes effective later. Right now, really the only multifamily housing that we have that is existing in town is the senior housing on Sacred Heart site, and then potentially dormitory housing on Menlo College. Technically, dorms are in a separate category, but there is something that could happen where they could convert it to multifamily housing. And so this just ensures that even though those are probably already low income, it's an example of how we would be able to apply inclusionary requirements to those if they were to transition to some level of private housing. And this would only apply at projects that had at least 5 dwelling. The reason that I indicated that we set the threshold at 5 is because that's what's included in our RM10 overlay. And one of the reasons that we set the threshold as applicability for the RM10 overlay at 5 is because you can already effectively get 4 units on a single family owned property. You can have your main residence and up to 3 variations of ADUs. So the ordinance does not apply, and there's specific exemptions to single-family dwelling units. Included in that would be ADUs, of course, accessory dwelling units, and then SB 9 urban lot split developments. Any questions on this? Okay, next slide. All right, reiterating again that the project must include at least 5 dwelling units. And then the percentage of affordability that is embedded in the ordinance right now is 20%. This is more important relative to RM 10, 20, and 40 because it's effectively already addressed in the housing element at 20%. It's part of what the city council has previously discussed as well. And the depth of affordability that the ordinance applies to would be low and very low. When expanding this to potential other sites like the SB 1123 potential or SB 79, there might be some flexibility relative to the 20% requirement. That's not in our housing element, and it hasn't been discussed by the city council. So if you had some concerns there, that might be someplace where the planning commission could offer some added insight too. And then where I've started the affordability for that category is at moderate. That's because a lot of discussion that we've had, especially in January, related to the possibility of projects pairing with the state's density bonus program, which if you are providing units at a deeper affordability level, lower, that means you get better bonuses. And so knowing the town's general apprehension to the ramifications of that type of development, I've set the income requirement higher. The developer could always go less than that. There's nothing, can't necessarily say you can't provide extremely low income units or very low income units. But this is the bar where we would start at relative to a town policy. So that's something to consider that the planning commission could certainly voice an opinion on. The third bullet point here is something that was raised by our city attorney in discussion, is that there is a regional housing needs allocation requirement to provide extremely low income units. These are not necessarily identified in our standard table, but they are required to be reported on in our annual progress report. And they're generally a new income level category. So we would anticipate having a specific number required in future housing element cycles, but right now it's more of a softer requirement. Because of the self-reported ADU surveys we've received, the number that come back and say, well, we're not going to apply any rent to these ADUs, we're actually really well in this category. So we don't necessarily need to require that the inclusionary housing ordinance includes them, but it might be something that we want to consider checking in on in another couple of years when we do a mid-cycle check-in on the housing element. So I kind of want to flag that for your consideration now. Because I'm also going to bring that up to the city council and make sure that they're comfortable with that strategy, since we haven't discussed it with them yet either. Finally, the last thing I'd point out in this area is that when you do the math of how many units, there's inevitably going to be a fraction at play. If the fraction is above 0.5, you can round that up to another unit based on how the ordinance is written. It also would allow you to do an in lieu fee payment for that fractional unit as well. The example I gave here is for something less than 0.5, so 1 requirement would then default to providing 1 unit and then a fee that's the equivalent of 4/10 of a unit. And that's how you deal with half of a unit or less than half of a unit. That fee then goes into a fund that presumably help the town acquire new land for development or finance housing to meet the RENA obligations on town-owned property. Questions on this slide? Okay, moving on. So one of the choices that we're pursuing is that we're not making a strong distinction between rental and ownership in inclusionary housing units. Many jurisdictions do this. One of the pieces of feedback that we took away in January from the BAE analysis is that rental units don't necessarily perform well in Atherton's housing market. Apartment rental units. So because we're not anticipating apartments being the primary housing category here, we're not discerning between rental and ownership. With that said, we certainly don't want to preclude that housing type because that's a housing type that is considered more accessible and is a great fit under the goals of affirmatively furthering fair housing. So one of the legal requirements of facilitating rental inclusionary units is that you have to have an alternative means of compliance. Because of the fractional unit issue, you can kind of see where there's already a requirement to have an in lieu fee. For a rental development, you also just need a straight up in lieu fee option. So we have for an alternative compliance with council approval, meaning the project would have to go to city council to demonstrate that they are eligible or can get approval for this alternative type of compliance. We're facilitating payment of an in lieu fee. And then the other type of compliance method that's been discussed previously is a land dedication. And this is because the town is really limited in the number of sites it actually owns. This was a really big challenge in looking at the housing element and even finding sites to put affordable housing on to begin with. The only property that the town was able to identify with capacity for affordable development was Holbrook Palmer Park. And even then, that's a really contentious discussion at the council level of what type of units would be developed there, how many, what's the right affordability level. And so there's challenges there. And that's why we've included having land dedication as an alternative to kind of open up some of the housing site options for the town. There are three approaches identified in BAE's analysis in terms of adopting an in lieu and how you would assess it. The first one is the nexus basis. This is a fee that would address the impact of market rate development on affordable housing. You're looking for the relationship between the number of affordable units and the actual development of town. Then you have the cost of construction, which is fees that would just simply cover the cost of construction of the units. And then you have the point of difference. And this is what the market analysis says. The fee is structured then to incentivize development of on-site construction because the cost is so great that it's actually more appealing to the developer to build the units. I have heard repeatedly from the city council that they are very interested in having the development of on-site units, and that's why they've are pursuing this program. And so that is why I'm going to recommend the higher fee kind of indifference. But it's of course open to discussion, and any that you have, I will pass along to the city council topic as well. Any questions here? Okay, next slide. Construction requirements. This is definitely a new category of conversation that we haven't really gotten into before, but they're fairly standard. The affordable units are required to be integrated with and indistinguishable from market rate units. Professionally, what we find in this field is if you're developing a 4-building project and you put all of the affordable units in one building, and that building then kind of becomes othered And it leads to stigmatization of these units that not helpful both to the people or the individuals living in them. And it's not useful to the people living around them. So this has become common practice.
What does it mean indistinguishable from market rate unit? So if this is a Class A property, is this going to be, all the units are going to be Class A?
Yes. So they would be the same
So-
materials used.
So a $5,000 a month unit is going to rent for $1,000 a month, to someone else.
Yes.
And are we going to somehow, I mean, it seems to me that if we did that, there's going to be incredible demand to move into Atherton, into these affordable units. How does that help the people who work in Atherton that would qualify for these units?
The selection criteria is generally based on your income levels. One of the reasons that we had to do the RM10 zoning do have affordable housing projects that are enabled through the housing element, but they are institutionally aligned with the property owners. So there's no institutional prioritization that would be inherently applied to any applicants for affordable housing within the town.
So we could, in effect, have people that are commuting 20 miles each way to their unit in Atherton because they want to live in Atherton. They want the address.
Yes.
And that doesn't seem to achieve our goals.
Well, the goals are regional. I mean, the allocation is regionally based. It's the regional housing needs allocation. And we had a discussion earlier tonight that dealt with a senior building inspector who was commuting from 3 hours away. So somebody is no longer working with us. So somebody that's living 20 minutes away to commute, or that's working 20 minutes outside of Atherton, but has a home here, is still a step in the right direction in reducing that trip issue.
Thanks.
So the next point I have here is that affordable units need to be constructed in proportion to the construction of market rate units. This is again kind of better explained if you're thinking of a multi-building project where you have 4 buildings under construction. You want to make sure that the number of inclusionary units are distributed generally equitable across the buildings that are proposed for development, and the timing of them is synchronized so that if you have a 20% requirement, 20% are available in the unit as you certify that unit. In practice, I would say that the planning director and the building official get pulled out, especially during there was a lot of times where we would get pulled out as practitioners to sites and try and help applicants kind of figure out, or developers figure out how to phase the development, structure it so that they could get units online when financing was tied up. Those are generally large projects, but it kind of helps provide an analogy why this is a relevant requirement to have in place. The next item is a 55-year affordability requirement for both rental and ownership units. This gets back to not necessarily distinguishing between rental and ownership. It used to be in the 1990s that standard practice, as all of these inclusion housing requirements were coming online, that 35 years was the magic number. Now we're seeing jurisdictions push it out to 55 because the housing crisis isn't going where it's still there. And then in some jurisdictions that are, are progressive, we're seeing it as high as 99. I don't feel comfortable recommending 99. I think sticking with 55 years as a starting point is a good place for a new ordinance. I do think that as the town kind of builds up some experience in this area, what you can also see is that jurisdictions add extending this as another form of alternative. So, it's 2025. If inclusionary housing ordinances became all the rage in the 90s, we've clearly hit already an expiration period. And so there was a lot of negotiation then with housing managers and city managers and developers to salvage these units the jurisdictions still really needed and keep them at affordable levels as an alternative means to new ones. Putting that out there for thought. And the last bullet point I have here, kind of capturing the overall process at application, applicants will be required to submit what's called an affordable housing plan. That's effectively them telling us how they plan to comply with the affordability component that's required of their project. And then before we approve the project, we would issue, or we would have them memorialize on the property title the affordable housing agreement, which addresses this 55-year affordability requirement, the income levels, and then any sort of participation in the town's program to manage the review of these units in perpetuity. Any questions? All right, next slide. Some additional requirements. I think I mentioned previously, any fees collected through the inclusionary housing program would be placed into a fund that's reserved for financing of affordable housing projects. This is going to be a separate framework that the council would adopt. It's not necessary. The mechanism for the housing fund is not part of the ordinance at this point. It just refers to the fact that a fund would be created. There will be an option for developers to seek administrative relief from the city council. And then there are specific enforcement and appeal protocols that give the town the ability to force on this agreement and give the applicant the ability. Actually, anybody can appeal an interpretation by the the planning manager. Necessarily have to be the applicant. It could be an upset neighbor. Could bring an interpretation I've made in terms of executing this ordinance to the Planning Commission for consideration, and then the Planning Commission's decision can be appealable to the City Council.
What do you mean by administrative relief?
This would be some sort of process that the applicant indicates that they can't afford the units. So the burden of demonstrating that would be on them, and that would have to go to the council for consideration.
Still don't understand. You mean that the developer can't build it for some reason?
Right, and so they want to pay an in lieu fee. That's not necessarily exactly what was set forward in the alternative compliance example. Next slide, please. So the general findings for making any sort of recommendation are on an ordinance that's going to the city council and under review by the planning commission is that the changes are consistent with the town's general plans, goals, policies, and implementation programs. What I've provided here and in the staff report are all of the various housing element goals, objectives, policies, and programs that address inclusionary housing. And it's very specific with the bottom at program 3.814 that addresses specifically adoption of an inclusionary zoning ordinance, and then somewhat more vague at the top where you have facilitate the development of faculty and student housing on school campuses. That's clearly part of our low income housing strategy. And so it all connects in here.
We don't need to go through all these.
No, I won't.
The key thing is committed to HCD that we're going to adopt an inclusionary ordinance. So some kind of ordinance needs to be adopted.
Yes. Next slide, please. So that concludes my presentation with the recommendation that you adopt the resolution before you and recommend that the council adopt an inclusionary housing ordinance.
So another question, who defines what level of affordability for each project?
So that comes from the federal government, the state government, and the county of San Mateo. And it is annual income levels that are reported and provided to housing managers.
That's the definitions, but
Right, but
whoever
who
builds
says,
it can decide.
who says we want half of these to be very low income? We want somebody to be extremely low. We want some to be different categories.
So that's
Besides that-
effectively happening right now.
I'm sorry,
That's happening right now. That's what's before you. And
but this doesn't, this is, as I read the ordinance, it doesn't define how many have to be of what particular income level.
so it's saying that 20% in the RM10 have to be at low or very low. And the RM20 and 40, I believe, is the same. And then anything outside of that is still 20%, but set at the moderate level. And that is taken with the exception of the kind of beyond category that is mirroring what has been in the housing element.
And do you know offhand what low and what was the other category? Low and
I can pull it up for you.
very low? Do you know offhand what those numbers are?
They vary by household size. So I can pull up the table for you.
Well, yeah, I know the table talks about a family of three.
It goes up to a family of 8, actually. It goes from 8. And then I can pull the table up.
Yeah, that's all right.
RM10, very low.
So I could see, you know, the Menlo Park schools enjoy a very good reputation. You had 4 children, I mean, it's beyond an incredible deal.
RM10 is very low and low, as is RM20 and 40.
So just to make sure I understand this, we don't trigger another study from BAE if we decide we don't like 20% for RM10.
If you go above 20, yes, you would,
But below, no.
but below, no.
So all probably saw the email from Tom Bryant,
Mhm.
who's on this commission. And I have a lot of respect for him and his analysis of these things. While his main thought process, I believe, is that we shouldn't have any, we should do away with RM10 because these new laws take care of more than enough low and very low income units for us.
Mhm.
He's also concerned about the fact that 20% with bonuses that a builder can get, that 10 units turns into 14. He's proposing that we consider a lower number. And even in SB 79, they use 13, which kind of limits the bonus density they can get to 12. Now, quite frankly, it's been a little surprising to me that right now they can take an RM10 lot and build 10 totally unaffordable units. And I ran the numbers with the architect and builder that I've worked with for years. I think they pencil out. I'm amazed that nothing's been done. And I don't think we have any in the pipeline, do we?
I have received a lot of inquiries trying to pencil 10 lot split variation of the RM on the RM10 sites. So it's not so much that they don't pencil out, it's that there's this potential other option that until we have an inclusion housing ordinance, or unless it's really at this point, it's kind of a race to get an application in the door for an SB 1123 on the RM10 properties before an inclusionary housing an inclusionary housing ordinance is adopted, because they like the model of the detached 10 single family homes more than this condo alternative.
That'd be an argument. That'd be a case where we'd like the fee to be high.
Yes.
We don't really want 4,000 square foot lots. And that would be more destructive than anything else we've looked at, other than the SB 79 stuff.
Well, the thing that I find the most frustrating about losing the RM10 property to an SB 1123 proposal is that we only have so many RM10 properties that we have said will get developed with multifamily housing. That we're looking for 3 before our mid-cycle check-in in the spring of 2028. So if we start losing those to single-family home subdivisions, then we're putting ourselves in a position where we might have to look at other sites. Now, there is the possibility that an SB 79 project comes in and takes care of that for us, and we have this other multifamily housing project that we could look at and say, well, that counts, so we've effectively done all of that anyway. But
And then we could dump the RM10 zoning completely.
potentially, but we would have to, we would have to wait and see. We can't necessarily make those determinations now without going through a process that looks a lot like what we just went through to adopt the housing element.
Not to eliminate the RM10s.
In order to eliminate the RM10s at this moment, we would have to.
Not at this moment. I'm saying if an
Yes.
SB 79 project came to fruition, why couldn't we immediately drop the RM10 zone?
It depends on what the SB 79 project is doing. So I've, given you generally the largest SB 79 project. The smallest is 30 dwelling units per acre. So on that project site, that's a third of an acre that could get you 9 units. And that's not even like they would have to do 9 units at a minimum. And 9 units isn't even required to do affordability under SB 79. That trigger didn't come into effect until 10. So there are, scenarios that we have to consider. Those would be, you're all looking, start listing them off. And that's kind of, I've given you the smallest. The largest, of course, is 120 dwelling units per acre. Some of the sites I think are just slightly over an acre, maybe 2. On top of that, if you meet certain requirements, you might be able to go slightly or above 120 dwelling units per acre. So I'm not even giving you necessarily the worst scenario.
With this SB 1123, a 40-story tower is looking more and more attractive. just have one big thing in the town and nothing else.
1123 is the lot split. So you're saying that
Oh, so they can do that with any lot.
SB 1123, no, it has to meet certain requirements. So the single family lots that are vacant, it based on the density requirements that are,
What's the time frame for vacancy?
I believe it's 3 years.
A year. So then somebody could come in and tear down a house and let it sit for.
Yes.
And there are some.
I don't have a lot of problems, very few problems with your draft here, including the higher fee and everything else that you proposed. Main thing I had is the fact that unfortunate people that got stuck with an RM10 designation next to their property could now end up with as many as 14 units with exceptions for floor area ratios, setbacks, height, who knows what. Like you say, a lot of different scenarios. So my thought was limiting on the RM10 to 13% or some number that at least keeps us down to 12 is be desirable and fairer to our unfortunate friends who have a problem. An RM10 site next door. I wouldn't want it to be me.
I do want to remind you that we haven't had public comment yet.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Anybody want any public comment?
Again, if there's anyone online who is interested in making a public comment on this item, please message one of the hosts.
Do you have any people online?
There are a few people who are still in the room. I haven't gotten any messages about anybody wanting to make a public comment on this item.
Have to be for punishment. Inclusionary fee, it's the right thing to, I think it's the right thing to do, for a variety of reasons, and I hope, like some people on the council would be that they pay the in lieu fee, so we develop a pot of money that we can apply to developing an affordable housing project. I don't like that term, but that we control and is as acceptable as possible to the bulk of our residents. But
Well, is that a way to fund something at Menlo College?
It could be. Also, do you want to close public comment?
yeah, I opened it and I closed it.
There we
Here,
go. Bingo.
officially there.
I'm on you tonight.
I know, that's all right. I'm a rookie.
I mean, I see why to do what's that term? Something that, what was the term that was $154 per square foot?
The point of indifference.
The
Point of I
indifference, yeah.
understand point of indifference because now it encourages building on the existing properties. But I mean, this is a way, if we can't get money to fund something on Menlo College, which is critical for our housing element because it provides a lot of units, lower income.
And absolutely nothing's been done on it so far.
It's been years, huh? It's been years. Doing something there.
I agree with you, Bob, to limit the numbers. Not 20%, but closer to 10%. So that we don't have those bonus units, which they're going to build everything they can.
And they don't have to be the same for RM20 and RM40. That can be a different percentage.
Correct. Although, part of the housing element does require RM 2040 to adopt a 20% requirement.
I wouldn't think about, I mean, why would we want it any less than that?
It's, yeah, and then that is, because that particular program is how the town has asserted in their housing element, they will address any shortfall on lower income units. And so one of the requirements from HCD to get certification is that we put that into our code and our ordinance. So I am going to be insistent on the 20% for the RM 2040 sites for that reason. The RM 10, 20% issue is more related to, well, that's what we told HCD. Do we want to go and consider something less? Do we want to get something adopted temporarily while we pursue that? And that would be direction I think that the council would need to give.
So we would make that recommendation to council and the
Yes.
council would.
They're going to do what they want anyway, but
So in terms of how you move this forward, but assert your preferences, you would direct me to put along, make any changes as you'd like. But if you were keeping it generally as I've proposed, you can also assert that the commission either unanimously or independently commissioners wanted to convey X, Y, and Z to the council for consideration. And I would put that in the staff report, and that would be shared publicly. It would be provided to them in advance. You can certainly come and speak at the city council meetings on behalf of yourself. And they recognize your background and interest as a commissioner. But you would just also want to assert that you're not speaking on behalf of everybody. You're respecting your own.
I have no problem with anything in here. I don't think, except I don't think RM10 should be 20% because of the unexpected consequences and possibilities.
Would you want to suggest a lower number or no percentage at all, like exempt from the program?
Yeah, I share your concern about those people.
So is that something we would include if we make a motion tonight as far as, or is that something, like you were saying, that you would take up separately as a recommendation to council individually?
It depends on how you would want to assert it and whether or not there was a unanimous voice by the planning commission. I mean, what I'm trying to address here is the circumstances where the planning commission voted certain sites out of the housing. And then I went to the city council and put them back in, acknowledging that the planning commission had taken them out. And city council was frustrated because the direction to include those sites wasn't necessarily paid to the planning commission. So that's one of the reasons why we've tried to have these joint study sessions so that it's clear what the direction from city council is to the commissioners as you are appointed by them. But you are allowed to disagree or, can push, especially relative to SB 79.
Well, the planning commission recommended overlay zones that the city council ignored. And they suggested removing some properties on Bay Road that the city council ignored. So I would remove any inclusionary housing fee from the RM10 sites if I had my druthers. And if they want to be the bad guys and pursue bad planning and get 14 units built on a lot on Bay Road or Oakwood or wherever, then let them do it. But I don't think it's good planning and not in favor of it. I could never support it. So I'll make a motion that we recommend to the city council determination of CEQA exemption and recommended adoption inclusionary housing ordinance based on the draft prepared by Brittany, our town planner, the exception that we do not have an inclusionary housing fee on the RM10 sites.
Are there any other exceptions we'd want to include besides that?
I didn't find any, but there's a lot there. Actually, slide presentation is better than the staff report
Mm-hmm.
listing them.
Can we pull up the slides again? Pull up the slides again.
Where?
Could we do that again, Brittany?
Sure. Go to slide 5.
Start with applicability, I guess, which is the 4th slide. Back
We can go
one,
back 1 to 4, yeah.
back one more.
So here you would strike the RM10 overlay.
So basically, we'd be saying here that it doesn't apply to the RM10 overlay.
Okay.
And I don't see anything wrong with anything else here.
What is the consequence of that?
The consequence is that if we don't include, so currently the RM10 sites are the only sites where there's any discussion, realistic discussion of construction happening. Whether it is through the RM10 program or SB 1123. And then we have the ADU program. So if you don't include the RM10, you miss out on any sort of low income units that would be provided through the program on those sites. And you are effectively relying entirely on ADUs, the school sites to develop, and anything that's captured in SB 79. SB 1123 at this point, the sites that are most eligible for that are the RM10 properties, just because standards work out.
And when you say school sites, we really have, I mean, there are no school sites. None of those schools have said we either
having,
want or are ready to do that. So that's
correct.
Other than Menlo College.
It doesn't have the money.
Yeah.
Just an aside, this SB 1123, they split it into 10 lots. Can they build ADUs on each of those?
That would be subject to the town's discretion. At this point, no, they're not allowed to do that. We will be coming back presumably next year with standards to address SB 1123. And so that question will be for you at that time.
Any other questions on this slide? We'll go to the next one.
Well, so do we want
To
to
eliminate
look
the
for
RM10, is that what you're
consensus?
saying? I'm all for it too. I mean, even if it's just symbolic, I think it's important that, you know, for the protection of the neighboring properties. I agree with that.
So the last thing I will put here is that you do not need to have a local inclusionary housing program in effect for a developer to choose to use the state's density bonus program. So by not having the inclusionary housing program doesn't mean that a developer can't come in and still get all those concessions that you're concerned about anyway.
Not sure I understand that. Talking about these multifamily sites,
Yes.
you're saying that he can come in and ignore all our rules and regulations, and just because he's going to build some affordable units, he can do anything he wants?
Yes. Through the state's program. I mean, if they're eligible to get the concession, they can get the concession. Doesn't matter whether or not we have an inclusive program.
Well,
The issue
why can't they do that on a single family site if it's that easy?
because they have to have at least 5 dwelling units to be eligible for the state's program.
I understand, but
And
so I come along and I say, I'm going to build 10 or 20 or whatever the number is. The fact that it's RM10 or single family is probably irrelevant.
Well, you have to be able to do multifamily development. So if you're zoned for RM10 and you can have multifamily development, that means that you're doing at least 5 units or at most 10. If you want to do more than that, you can use the state's program to go above by providing affordable units as part of your project. Depending on the depth of affordability and the number of the affordable units you're including, then get a certain number of concessions or waivers that you can apply to your.
I'd have to see the state rules and see how they compare to what you're proposing, but anything we can do to discourage that is, I'm in favor of.
Not having the inclusionary ordinance apply to this property doesn't inherently discourage it.
I heard you say that, but again, what they can do on their own with this so-called state program you're talking about, I'd have to see what that is.
Okay.
I mean, how many units can they build?
Well, if they do 100% affordable housing, they can have, this is the one where they can have up to 3.5 extra stories. I can pull up
So they can do,
table.
so they can do that anyway.
Yes.
I still, so far, nobody's built, they can make them completely affordable, even though theoretically the numbers pencil out. You say it's partially because they're moving towards, they're thinking in terms of 1123 instead, but I still see no reason to incentivize additional units in the RM10 sites. It's just me. That's maybe the only issue. Quickly, let's go through
Yeah.
these other slides and see if there's anything else that sticks out that is questionable in anyone's. I have a problem with
I'm fine with
anything,
that.
except for the RM10, of course. I don't have a problem there either. We don't have a choice about those first couple bullets. We could change 55 to some other number, but I don't know that it would be worthwhile.
Right.
It's all fine. That's baked in. It's the only issue is 10. I made a motion. There's a motion on the floor.
With the exclusion of the RM10?
Yes.
Has that been seconded?
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Polito,
Aye.
Commissioner Lugers,
Yes.
Commissioner Tinelli,
Aye.
Commissioner Levison,
Yes.
and Commissioner Siebolt.
Given how recently I joined this, can I abstain without
Sure.
making a
Absolutely.
statement? I just don't feel like I have got the knowledge base to,
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
totally.
no,
legit.
absolutely, that's allowed.
great.
All right. With 4 ayes and 1 abstain, the motion
Evidently, I'm not
passes.
that smart.
No. it's-
I will
this
invest the time.
thing's-
I will invest the time, I promise.
It is.
We've,
Good
we've-
luck.
the council and the planning commission have gone down so many rabbit holes on this thing while we all learn together.
Thank you
Brittany,
for the grace.
Brittany tries to keep us on track, but,
She's doing it.
all right, staff reports?
So I have a few items. The first is the 2026 Planning Commission meeting schedule for approval. This is standard fourth Wednesday of every month with the exception of November and December. The meetings fall on the holiday weeks. So November is canceled and then we move it up to the second Wednesday in December. Want to take a vote? Or
Now, motion to approve?
Second.
I don't think we need a voice.
Yeah, aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, now this, your summary,
yes.
which is pretty complete, I think.
This is really just an opportunity for you to see the work that we've done together over the year and offer any thoughts or comments on what you'd like to see moving into the next year. I don't have a presentation, just sharing the information with you.
Okay.
All right.
Comment on that?
Received, no comments. The last item, the town planner report, was really just kind of a placeholder to brief you on the fact that we did talk about SB 79 at the city council study session last week. The council considered whether or not revisiting the sites that are applicable under SB 79 and expanding those by moving the density to others. They decided that they wanted to stick with the sites that were identified in state law. Part of the reason is because that is a process that would mirror a lot of what we just did with the housing element. The second component to that was directing staff to start crafting development standards for what SB 79 development look like. We have standards that we've all worked on together for RM10 and the RM2040 sites. The RM20 and 40 and 10, they're all named after the amount of density on them. So if we're covered for 40 dwelling units per acre, not covered for 120 dwelling units per acre. And so we need some exercises to make sure that we have some standards that developers have to shape their building. They're not completely exempt from trying to meet the design standards that we put forward. So that's on my plate for next year as well.
It's going to take a while, right?
Yeah, good luck.
No, it's going to go extremely fast because SB 79 becomes effective on July 1st. And these standards are subject to a 90-day review by the state HCD. So I am going to move something forward with lightning speed so we have something at all in place. We can certainly table some items that might be more controversial, but I'm going to push to have something available for the town to use to accommodate neighbors somewhat.
When is this SB 1123 effective?
It's already effective. It became effective
Can-
in July.
Can you write something up to give us a more thorough understanding of it so that when it comes before us, and understand, we have it down.
Sure.
Because this
I
is
don't-
one that seems very popular with builders because they think, oh yeah, I can bang out at least 10 single-family homes right here. I mean, it'd be like the development on Laurel Street in
Menlo Park.
Menlo Park, across from the athletic fields, where there's, I don't know what the name is called.
The ones across from Burgess
Yes,
that are maybe from the early 2000s that have really small lots.
they're 2000.
That abut SRI.
Yeah. Okay. I know
Yeah.
which ones you're talking about.
Yeah.
Those, I believe, are condos. So
They're single-family
townhomes.
homes,
Oh, really?
But
Okay.
they're not.
courtyard
they're-
homes.
They're bigger than 4,000 square. That's not bad.
I don't know, but,
Yeah.
but I think we'd see something along those lines possibly, and we need to be prepared for it.
Good.
Commissioner reports. I have one real briefly. Trying to seeing that no progress is being made on the college campus housing. Reason allegedly was the president said he didn't have any staff time to devote to the project. And that without some staff time devoted, he couldn't produce the deliverables he needed to start fundraising. Which seemed like a big cop-out to me. I went to PPG and they agreed to produce the deliverables if the town and or college and or a committee or whomever could bring them stuff they needed, what they wanted to be built, how many units, where it's going to be, so that they could produce some brochures and some drawings, et cetera. They agreed to do it. Even though they suspected that there are people at board over at past board members over at the college that try and derail the project. Anyway, they agreed to do it and left it in the mayor's hands. She was going to try and get the Atherton, side of Atherton, to work with her on that, my knowledge, according to, so I wasted my time. At least I tried.
That's great.
Out of curiosity, why would
One guy over there, I mentioned his name, I know him because he used to sit next to me at the Stanford of a strange. Apparently he failed a lot of projects over there, for whatever reason. And Brad, the lead guy over at PPP, kids went to school, college, so he's experienced it firsthand. To me, it's crazy.
I agree.
You get
I think they would.
get the free materials you need to start fundraising.
Sure.
Can't take that much effort to put together, but. All right, motion,
Second
All
motion.
motion. Second.
favor, aye.
Aye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Long meeting.
That's right. Good meeting.